Bye! My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home.
Welcome back to another episode of Duck Dogs, everybody. I'm your host, Josh Miller. And as we get rolling here, let's be sure to thank our wonderful sponsors. Thank you to Eukanuba. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the blend of food that I feed my personal dogs and the dogs at the kennel. But in this episode, you're also going to hear about, hopefully gain some knowledge about some of the other blends from Eukanuba as we share some tips that we found on our recent trip down to Eukanuba. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020. Thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs as it pertains to your four-legged hunting partner. So as season ramps up, as training season, I should say, ramps up, be sure to stop by online at www.gundogsupply.com to pick up anything that you need for your training season. Thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka Gear is your premium option for outdoor clothing. We think of Sitka Gear, of course, during the hunting season, but during this off time, it is a fantastic everyday wear that will help keep you more comfortable and in the field longer training, not just hunting. So www.sitkagear.com. Thank you to Kent Cartridge. Kent is the shotgun shell that we shot all hunting season, but now as we transition to the training season, the poppers that they make, that's what we're kind of focused on right now. So if you need poppers for your training, go check out Kent Cartridge. Thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test rated kennel, both in the intermediate and in the large size. So no matter how big or small your hunting companion is, you can be sure that they're riding the safest way possible. www.luckyduck.com. And also thank you to Retriever Roadmap. Retriever Roadmap is your premium online option to help guide you with a video library on how to train your dog at home. www.retrieverroadmap.com. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for bearing with us. I know we had a little bit of a break here. I think, last couple of weeks we have not gotten an episode out, but that's because I have been traveling. I'm going to share with you some of the stuff that we learned while we were traveling. So I'm excited about this. And for this episode, I brought in my lovely wife, Whitney.
Thank you for having me back in the studio.
The studio. I like when we make it sound so professional. The corner of our bedroom / studio. And the reason I brought Whitney in is for a couple things. So just kind of give you a preview of what is going to go on during this episode. So first, Eukanuba recently had Whitney and I, along with a few other members of their key team, influencer team, if you will, down to their corporate office. And it was a really good experience, but it's one of those things that there were so many aha moments that I think, we both had, that we wanted to share some of that with you and hopefully have some aha moments of your own that you can take and apply to your dog as it pertains to their health, as it pertains to fueling them and how their body works. Some really neat stuff. So we want to go over that. I want to touch base here with Whitney as puppy season seems to be just about here and underway. And then the last, which I feel like is going to be a really interesting thing to talk about, I'm not going to share with you yet because Whitney and I have never talked about this, and I kind of want her unfiltered opinion as it pertains to this. So,
oh boy.
Surprise. So anyway, Whitney?
Yes.
What have you been up to?
Well, I basically just wrapped up our winter puppy season, fall, winter puppy season. Just sent my last puppy home yesterday. And now I am puppy free for about a week and a half until like our spring puppy season starts. So it's been so fun. We had a lot of fun litters on the ground, some new ones, some repeat breedings, and just taking care of puppies.
Mm-hmm. What I think is so funny about puppy season is that I think there's this preconceived notion that puppy season is spring.
Right.
And I say we're going into puppy season. Spring is not puppy season, right? And they're not, dogs are not like deer where they come into heat one specific time of year. They get bred one specific time of year. They have fawns one specific time of year. Just like turkeys, just like everything else, are wild animals. A lot to do with the way in which they live, right? Being in the wild and needing the weather and Mother Nature to cooperate with the survival of their young. And the reason, really, that spring is thought of as quote-unquote puppy season is quite frankly because the industry, the outdoor industry in particular, talks about puppies so much during the spring. Like if you look at like Gundog Magazine has a spring puppy issue, right? That's all about puppies, and they're not the only one. That's just the first one that comes to mind. Everybody talks puppies. I would be willing to bet on social media you're going to see a lot about puppies during the spring. Why is that? Well, it's because they don't have anything else to talk about.
It's true.
You're not going to talk about puppies during the middle of hunting season when you only have so many hunts, so many months to capture this, right? And later in the summer, it is all about training, right? Because you're getting your hunting companion, your athlete ready. Now, my argument to that is you should be doing that right now. But a lot of us don't. And so what happens is that that's the topic to talk about, say, July and August as you head towards September, and then they finally have something in the field to talk about. This is an empty time of year, right? So, snow goose hunting is finishing up, and quite frankly, they've run out of things to talk about. So that's where puppies come in. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I would totally agree with you on that. And it just so happens there really is we do have more litters in the spring and fall. Those are kind of our puppy seasons, but that's just when females are coming into heat. Like it all started with people females coming into heat in the spring, late winter, spring, and then it just kind of morphed into a puppy season.
Right. Well, you just had a litter go home, what, a month ago? Less than a month ago? No, 2 weeks ago, right?
My last litter? Yeah, last week.
Right. So those puppies were born 4 months ago. Or I'm
2
sorry,
months ago.
bred.
Correct.
4 months ago-ish, right? So, think about, so that girl, let's just say, for ease, let's just say beginning of March, right? So you rewind. So December, she was bred-ish. I hope I'm doing my backwards math.
This is why we don't homeschool our kids.
Either way, it wasn't what you'd consider in the season.
For
right?
sure, 100%.
And so I just felt like I would debunk that. Like everybody thinks, well, it's puppy time. It's puppy time. There's also something to be said about the psychological, especially, the humanizing that we all have, right? So humans think of spring as new growth, as babies, because, for everything you just talked about, right? Like all the wild animals that are having their babies and they're young during that time. I just think that new spring growth and being able to be outside, that excites people, and that's another reason that it just kind of funnels that whole puppy activity.
For sure. Yeah, you get a whole nother level of excitement.
So, okay, so that was kind of a real quick one on puppies, but here's what I want to go over. I want to go over our Eukanuba trip, because this was an extremely beneficial thing for me to be able to go down, see everybody in person, see their facility, which was incredible, by the way, and really be able to understand and be educated more on the product, on the formulas, on why certain things are digested in certain ways. And here's what I'm going to tell you guys. I'm going to try to get either one of their head veterinarians or one of their scientists that formulate, these formulas, and get them on for one of these episodes, because I am not going to dig into maybe some of the nuts and bolts in fear of saying something incorrectly. I don't want to misinterpret, or if I misinterpreted what was being educated to me, I don't want to then further that misunderstanding onto you. There's some key points that I have in my notes that I want to share with you guys. I think they're really neat, but it's one of those things that I would love to get someone on to be able to dig deep into a specific nutrition episode. So I want that to come. I'll work on getting that to come. But I just felt like this was kind of a neat time we could sit down and dig into some of these things.
Yeah, that was an incredible trip. I took away a lot from a breeding standpoint and an adult dog standpoint, and how much that they really put into what they do behind the scenes. Yeah,
there's an incredible amount of thought and effort. So let's dig into some of this stuff. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if there are any specific things that really jump out to you. But I want to go over, I'll start with one. If you have one that you want to jump into, you can jump into it. Okay. But the first one was specifically around the puppy formula, right? So that puppy formula, the Eukanuba, it's the Performance Puppy Pro, right? That formula, we have seen dramatic changes in our puppies and in our moms across the board. So for you, this is not the scientific stats. Tell us about, for you, what you have seen in your puppies and in your mamas that has really, because you were one of the first, I believe, to field test this product. And like, I didn't see it because I'm not with the puppies, nonstop, but you just could not stop saying enough good things about this. So tell me some first observations that you had. Yeah,
for sure. So I used to feed my mamas a 30-20, and they did amazing on it. And I was like, okay, we'll try it on our mamas. And I honestly didn't know what to expect. I expected to see some change, but not as much as I did. And so we start our mamas on it literally from the day that they're bred.
The Puppy
Pro. Yes. And so during their pregnancies, so this kibble, it's a different shape, and it looks like a little Cheerio. And I think when these mamas are pregnant, they're obviously, their stomachs are getting smaller because their uteruses are getting bigger. And I think just that shape of the kibble really helps them want to continue eating, because a lot of times their appetites change. They lose their appetite. So number one, my mama stayed on that kibble a lot longer than when they were on the 30-20. I think it was just more appealing, a little bit different flavoring for them. The one thing that I found extremely interesting that I did not realize was, I knew that this food had a lot of DHA in it for brain development. And these mamas on day 21 of gestation, that's when that DHA passes into these puppies while she's pregnant. And I think that's actually incredible from a couple different standpoints. It's like, okay, so one, it takes 3 weeks from when they're bred to when it starts to get into those puppies, because it has to go through the mom system and then get passed on to the puppies. But two, when you think about it, gestation is very commonly 60 days for our females, from the first breeding to day 60. And it's crazy when you think about how much those puppies change from day 21 to when they're born. When they start to get that DHA at day 21, now their brain has that much time to soak up, their bodies have that much time to soak up the DHA. It's really incredible. So that's from that standpoint. And then our mama's milk production on that is amazing. Our moms I had Spay, little tiny Spay, have a litter of 10 puppies last fall. And she nursed every single one of those puppies. That has never happened before, that a mama could nurse those puppies and at a very healthy rate. So that was amazing. Then, of course, when we go to transitioning the puppies.
Just time out. Yeah. When you say it's never happened before, that's our experience. We're not saying that it's never happened before, just to be clear.
So, when I say it's never happened before, I mean, sometimes you have litters where you have to supplement them a little bit, or just really keep an eye on them, make sure you're plugging them up to mom. Spay just did not have an issue with that. So it was just an ease of mind for myself, knowing that she could produce that much milk with all the extra nutrition she's getting from the Puppy Pro. And then when we talk about our puppies, when they're starting that mush, so the kibble was made to soak up water. So it's easily digestible for these mamas, puppies. And you could totally tell that in the mush. I mean, I had just a smoothie blended mush, no clumps in it at all. And those puppies gravitated towards that instantly. And then you talk about introducing that kibble as a dry kibble. It's a Cheerio shape. And so it's small, it's hollow in the middle, extremely easy for these puppies to break down with their little puppy teeth and then their digestive system. And then you talk about digestive system, their GI tract. Now these puppies are having extremely nice stools, nice hard puppy stools at a younger age. So, I mean, all across the board, it was these incredible differences. And then you talk about weaning the mama, and I saw a huge difference in how they bounced back. I mean, these mamas, when I sent puppies home between 7 and 8 weeks, I would have the mama in the office. So, our clients could meet the mama, their puppy, and they would literally say, "Oh, who is this?" And I'd be like, "This is your puppy's mom." And they're like, "No way. You would never even know that she had a litter of puppies 7 weeks ago."
And that was because the sagginess.
She was almost completely dried up. Her body condition, she did not look like weathered. Her skin and her coat were so soft. She was very alert. She had so much energy. I mean, she looked like any, young dog that you would bring into the, I mean, people sometimes thought that they were like the sire or maybe just a dog that we had in for training. They would have never guessed it was the mom because of how good she looked.
Well, and another thing that really, I guess, stood out to me, and this is what's so neat about getting so many people in one room, is that a good friend of ours, Jared Moss, who owns Best Gun Dogs out in Utah, specifically handles short hairs, but I think trains all pointing dogs. He had said that he had a female of his that was on her third litter of pups, and she had, I think, excuse me, Jared, if I'm getting this wrong, but I think it was like 2 or 3 pups, the first 2 litters, and then transitioned her to this Puppy Pro, fed her this Puppy Pro, bred her again for the 3rd time, and did he say 8?
I think so.
I mean, so the nutritional value that these girls are getting, sometimes we don't take that into consideration. Right? Like, we think about the puppies, we think about the growth, we think about all this stuff. And one of the comments that I took from this meeting, which I thought was really neat, which was like a duh moment, but like an aha to actually appreciate it, is one of the scientists that put this this blend together. He said, "Is this a perfect puppy formula?" No. And the reason is that the perfect puppy formula is coming out of mom. Like, that is the perfect puppy formula. But they feel extremely confident that this is the best puppy formula as far as a fabricated food, a made food on the market. And from everything that you have seen, you agree with that. And I think what stood out to me was, in that room, you have a lot of trainers, you do have breeders, but there's a lot of people in there that are expecting big things out of their dogs. They push their dogs to high levels, right? And I would have thought that the majority of the conversation would have been around 30-20, would have been around that kind of peak exercise formula, and it wasn't. The Puppy Pro is what really drove the conversation. Now, there's something else in here. I don't want to sway off of puppies quite yet, but there's something else about just kind of the mixes that I thought was interesting too, of how to play that. But one of the things, there are a couple of things as you're on puppy that jumped out to me, is I'm literally looking at my notes from my Eukanuba notepad that I used down there. So the first one, this was an aha moment for me. Okay, so the first one is, when you talk about puppies, little puppies, from the time that they are born to the time they are 4 months of age, okay? So from the time they're born to the time they're 4 months of age, think about a child, a human child. Think about how much they grow and how much they change in a month's time. Okay, 4 weeks in a month's time. Think about if you have a child of your own, it's a little easier to picture this. Or maybe you're an uncle or a cousin that you don't see we just did this last night. Our daughter turned 4, and so yesterday, and so my brother, who lives in Michigan, FaceTimed us, and his kid Roman. We haven't seen him in months,
long time.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I hardly recognized him. He had grown so much. So where I'm going with this is think about the growth and change that happens in a young child, human child, in 4 weeks. 1 week of development for a puppy is equal to 4 weeks development of a human child. So what that means is you think about how much change and how much growth and how much goes on in a human child over the course of 4 weeks as they're growing and developing. From the time a puppy is born to 4 months of age, that is 1 week.
It's amazing.
4 weeks of a human, 1 week of a puppy. That is a crazy amount of development that goes on. And so what I think is so interesting about this puppy formula, why puppy food is so important, because for a long time, like, I think this is one of those things. So when you talk to people about food, specifically dog food, my goodness, it is like you are trying to change someone's religion if you talk to them about a different kind or different brand of food. It's kind of mind-boggling. But here's the one thing that I think I've learned over the years to do. It is to put away and put aside my ego and just realize I don't know what I don't know, right? Like we talked about that with training. We talked about that with a lot of things. But as it comes to food, I don't know what I don't know. For the longest time, we fed an all life stages food. Okay. What we learned on this trip was that how can that possibly be? How can you possibly have one blend of food for all stages of the body? So you're talking in this development time up to 4 months, where 1 week equals 4 months of a kid's development. That puppy that's growing at that rate and developing at that rate is going to need a different formula, a different nutritional panel than a dog at peak performance of 4 years old and running like crazy, which is going to need a different formula than the dog that we met today in Tide, who's 14,
right?
And you hate to say this, but naturally on her way out, and her body's going to need something different, right? So there can't be this one food fits all, right? So finding the right food for you. So one of the things with the Puppy Pro formula, which I found so intriguing, was that it was made for the rate that puppies develop at. I think that's really, really important.
It's extremely important.
So I don't know if you looked to me
well,
like
I was
you had
going to
something
say
you're
it's important because a puppy's growth is everything. That is the very start of everything. I mean, they're an athlete. You need to make sure their bodies are growing at the appropriate rate, because if they don't, you have potentially an increased risk of hip or elbow dysplasia. And you hear about that all the time. And by feeding the proper food, that is one way to minimize that risk.
Yeah, think about we had a kid in high school that did this. So I don't know how common this is. Maybe you can't relate to this at all. But we had a kid that had a growth spurt and grew so fast that I can't remember what happened, but he actually had to go get medical attention over it because he was growing at an abnormal speed, and his body wasn't meant to grow that fast. Really interesting. That's a little off in the weeds compared to what we're talking about, but it is an interesting thing. Something else I found interesting about puppies. Okay, so you had mentioned that you see much better stools out of these puppies at this age. I think we as a dog owner group, we have all been trained to look at stools as like that first sign of something being wrong, right? And I do think it's a great sign, especially within an older dog. You start seeing loose stool, you start seeing issues there. It could be stress. It could be that you're traveling, which is a kind of stress.
Overworking.
But it could be, or it could be that your food isn't doing it for them, right? Your nutrition is off,
right?
But it also could be the first sign of something going wrong, right? An illness, a sickness, something like that, right? Puppies, maybe not so much, right? Maybe a little less of the panic meter. So here's the note that I have that I thought was so interesting. So at about 12 weeks old, a puppy is at about 28% of solid matter as it goes through their lower GI tract. Okay, when I'm talking about stool and waste now at this point. Anything under 27% solid matter will be loose or wet stool. I'm reading word for word my notes here. The biggest reasons puppies have more loose stool in their digestive system is that their digestive system is still developing and the lower GI tract is not reabsorbing enough water into the body with the digestive tract still developing. So what we mean by that is that if your puppy drinks a lot of water and their puppy GI tract, specifically the lower GI tract, is not developed yet, that means that the body is likely not reabsorbing all that water, which means that you are likely going to be over that percentage of solid matter, which means it's going to come out as loose or wet stool. It doesn't mean the dog is sick.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just simply is that the dog's body isn't developed to work as an adult body yet. So I found that really interesting because I think I'm guilty of stools are my first sign that something's off. And so it's just interesting to me that puppies, and there was something with the Royal Canin. So Royal Canin is a part of the Eukanuba family. I think that there was, if I remember right, I shouldn't even say this because I know it's not going to be right, but the Royal Canin had a stool reference guide, and I think the adult stool types was like 3.
There's like 5.
5?
Yep.
Do you remember how many were on the puppy?
I think they have 12.
Yeah. So the vast, there's so much different stool types you can see out of a puppy than an adult dog. So I guess if you have a puppy and you're seeing some of this, don't hit the panic button right away. I guess that's kind of what I'm going at here.
Yeah. I mean, don't. I mean, maybe still bring it up to your veterinarian.
Yeah, okay. I'm not saying don't ignore it. I'm just saying, like, it's very interesting to me how different these puppies are when they're still developing.
For sure.
Rather than the adult dogs.
Right.
Yeah,
When
it's
I
very
find
different.
it interesting. So here's an example. So when my puppies are little, you know, they're still nursing from mom, plus are getting mush, which has a ton of water in it, right? That is when we see the most watery stools. And it makes so much sense because they're getting so much liquid milk from mom, plus all that from their mush, which is why more times than not they have the loose stools.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, so let's transition out of puppies.
Okay.
Now let's get towards the adult dogs. One of the things I found really, really interesting was the encouragement to find what blend or what food is right for your dog. Yeah. There wasn't this push of one food fits all. There wasn't this push of like you need to be feeding 30-20, which quite frankly, especially those of us with sporting dogs, I just think for as long as I've been around this, I have been preached to 30-20, 30-20, 30-20. If you don't know what I'm talking about, 30-20 is the protein to fat ratio that is in a certain blend of food. So the thought process is 30-20 is what an athlete needs to run on, right? And if you go down to like a 26-16 or less, that then all of a sudden like the dog's not considered an athlete anymore. You're talking a dog that's maybe not as again, this is I think a bunch of egos talking, a bunch of us macho trainers of well, like my dog's an athlete. He needs 30-20, right? He's not a couch potato. He's not a house dog. He's not a okay. We were encouraged to think outside of that box, which I thought was a really cool challenge. And the idea was find what is right for your dog, right? So one thing that we have heard a fair amount, especially right now during this winter time, is dogs that are eating stool.
Yep.
Right? And when I say stool, I mean they go to the bathroom and they'll eat it or they'll eat the next dog. Like it's disgusting, right? None of us probably want our dogs doing that. I know I don't. So one of the things that was encouraged was, I specifically had asked, this question of how would we remedy something like that? And the idea was is that if they're doing that, they're likely unsatisfied. Okay. Now to satisfy, and I'm air quotes now, satisfy a Labrador Retriever, you might think, well, I need to feed them 100 cups of food a day in order to satisfy them, because they would eat the entire bag. I get it. But the idea here, and we have been testing it now for the last week, and I've noticed a significant difference. We have 2 dogs in particular. They're both young dogs, so there might be some of that that are
immature.
Yeah, they're shit eaters. I mean, that's just what they're going to do. So what I've done is those 2 dogs, the idea was you're feeding them 3 cups of 30-20. Back them off to 26-16. Feed an extra cup.
Yep.
Okay, so they're still getting what they need, but they're being more fulfilled from a substance standpoint.
Yep. I
have seen a drastic difference out of those 2.
I agree. And it makes so much sense that it's been cool to see the transition. So
where I'm going with this is that if you have been stuck in that my dog needs a certain blend because of why, right? Like, don't be afraid, if you're seeing something, to change out of it. Okay. Yeah. So for example, we have one of our dogs that is just very gassy. Has been. Right. We have now switched him to, what did we switch him to?
So I went way to the basics, and I actually put him back on the Puppy Pro because I wanted to be like, okay, let's start from ground zero and work our way back up.
But now we have him like a half and half, right? We have him like a half Puppy Pro, half
26-16.
Okay.
We're slowly working our way back up to see where his line is.
Right. So where we're going to go with this, and we'll share with you the results when we find it. We're thinking this might be does he just live on 26-16?
Right.
Is he a half and half, where we're half 30-20, half 26-16? Where's the line to where it works for him and his system?
Yeah.
We own, how many dogs do we own right now?
Too many.
I knew that, but what are we at right now? Like 15?
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
There is no way that you can have one food that is going to check all the boxes of all 15 dogs, right? Now, if you're a 2-dog owner and you have one dog that has always done really well at this, you bring a new dog in and they don't. I get how it can be frustrating. I really do, you guys. I get how you don't want to buy two different kinds of food, and you don't want to buy 2 different blends of food, and you don't want to have 2 different bags of food in the house or 2 containers. I get it. But if you have multiple kids, you're not feeding those same 2 kids exactly the same either, right? You and your spouse or your significant other or your best buddy, like, you guys don't have the same diet. You guys don't thrive off the same thing. It's just reality, right? And so, finding what works for your dog is something I would encourage everybody to go out there and do. And it's been a really interesting test now, because we've been, I said a week, but it's probably actually been more than that, probably a week and a half that we've been testing this.
Yeah.
And so it's really been an interesting transition that we've been looking at. So
they're all great blends, and every athlete needs something different. You look at the dogs are all different athletes. They have all different jobs, and they just need to be fueled with the correct formula. You're not degrading your dog and their nutrition by going to 26-16. You're bettering them if that's what they need.
Which that right there was the myth that I think I busted in my head when that was talked about, was that if you talk to someone that is just adamant, this is the food.
Yeah.
Ask them why. Oftentimes you don't have a real actual answer. It's just, I've tried them all and this one works the best. Okay. That's not an answer. Right. Now it's an experience. Great. I'm not trying to discredit that. But what I am saying is that to truly dig into this and be like, why, right? So I don't know what I don't know, right? So my head was, if I feed 26-16, I'm not going to be fueling the dogs with the best. Okay. My buddy Chris Aiken, which he's a half comedian. It's hilarious to be around him. But in the meeting, he said that. Yeah. He's like, I don't want to feed my dogs 26-16.
Yeah.
And the scientist said, why? And he said, because it's not the best. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I want to, when I think he used the example, when I buy a pickup truck, like, I'm not getting the work model. I want the platinum, right? Like we all want the best for our dogs, so the highest, grade, the highest, like, but that is what we have all, Chris, probably one of the reasons that I thought that, right? Like he's one of the people that has taught me, things over the years. So it's one of those things that it's not right. And we need to get out of that thought of, okay, what works for this dog? Not, it has to be this blend.
Right.
Really interesting.
Yep.
Okay, so we're into adult dogs. One of the things I found super interesting, and you can jump in here if you have anything that you want to interrupt me with, but 30% of the protein that your dog eats is used in the body for skin cell renewal and hair growth.
Incredible.
That's how important your dog's coat is to their body, right? Now, I think the caveat to this was that if there's other areas of your dog's body that is in need, that it's also the last place that it goes. So your body, the dog's body will funnel that protein to other areas if needed inside the body. But 30% goes to hair growth. Yeah. Like that to me was pretty mind blowing. And then the thing there was, if you're seeing coat issues, there's likely an issue, whether it's the food isn't working with the body, or is there something wrong with the body?
Right.
It really was an interesting one. I'm going to share this because I feel like this is a theory, but I feel like it's a theory that makes a lot of sense. And it's one I want to share with you guys because I really liked this. And we've always heard about survival of the fittest. We've heard about the strongest survive, all that stuff, right? But there's this thought out there, especially when it pertains to dogs and what they eat, that if you Google that, you're bound to get a million different answers, right? You've got the raw diet, you've got grain-free diet, you've got all this stuff, right? And they all have their pitches. The thing that is interesting to me is that almost all the pitches have been, this is what wild dogs do, this is what wolves do, especially wolves, right? This is what wolves do, this is what wolves do, okay? The theory of survival of the friendliest, not the fittest. So the theory of survival of the friendliest talks about how domesticated dogs of today are not wolves. And what happened was, again, theory, was that it was the friendliest of the wild dogs, call them wolves if you like to, that were first homed with the human people. You think about it, that probably makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
The ones that aren't friendly probably aren't coming up to this group of people to see what they're like, which end up being domesticated, right? To be a part, accepted into the group and a part of the group, right? Like you're not getting the aggressive dogs that are being like that, right? The theory of survival of the friendliest. Okay, so the friendly dogs get involved with the humans. So where the different looks have come from is likely these more friendly dogs likely had lower cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, because they're not as edgy, they're not as anxious, they're not as aggressive, right? And then likely the friendliest were bred with the friendliest, and so on and so on and so on, lowering that cortisol level, which if you lower it enough, again, I'm not a scientist, this is the theory, is the appearances change because of it. Okay. Now, what is so interesting to me about this as it pertains to the food is that if you think about, let's just think about back in the day, you've got a couple, dogs that are with this, like I always think of Ice Age. I don't know why, like the kid movie Ice Age. But you have, the wolves that are with the humans. They go hunting. They kill bison. Okay. Those dogs are not getting the back straps. Those dogs are not getting the best parts of that meal that is going to be saved for the humans. So those dogs got the scraps that were deemed probably not overly desirable by the humans. And so they were fed whatever the humans deemed they got, right? So over time, the digestive system of the dog changed. It's not what it was. They're not wolves,
Right.
So this whole thing, this whole idea based on your dog's a wolf, feed the inner wolf, or I can't remember what it is, but I've heard that somewhere. Like, the dog is not a wolf,
Right.
and so it was a really interesting theory. I felt like was worth sharing, because I've now taken this thought into the nutrition side of things for sure. Of how different are you, right? So, and then you start looking dog to dog, like what we had talked about.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that was not a Eukanuba driven theory. Yeah, that's just a theory that I've heard and I've really liked. But I thought it was opportunistic to share that here because it was really, really interesting to me. But the protein thing, 30%, that's an extraordinary number, to me. Anyway.
It is amazing. And we get comments all the time on our dogs' coats and how healthy they look and how soft they are.
So, which is 100% true. I didn't mean to move on from that. Yeah, that's probably the number one comment we get, right?
Sure.
Because people can visually see it.
Yep.
One thing that is interesting to me that I learned was that, so inside bowels or intestinal tract of the dogs, I assume this is the same in humans, it's skin. Don't know why I didn't think that, right? And so that when there's a skin issue, okay, so the note I have here is dogs with skin issues on the outside likely having bowel issues on the inside too. Not a direct, not 100% thing, right? But it's a sign, it's a likelihood, right? So when you talk about nutrition, it has been incredible how many number of dogs. I wish I actually have been keeping track. I wish I would know how many dogs came in to the kennel for training that have been having maybe heavy dandruff, have been having really coarse and rough coat, have been having maybe skin and itching issues, that we bring them in, we put them on our food, which is the Eukanuba Premium Performance line, and it changes. I mean, nutrition is everything. It's so incredible. Not everything, right? I would say genetics are everything. But it's amazing what the nutrition can do for your dog.
Absolutely.
So, was there anything else that you had that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that covered it.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to cover is hydration, and specifically HRI, which is heat-related illness. So this would be the level before you go into heat stroke. Okay. So the premium performance line of Eukanuba has been proven to lower the risk of HRI. And I think this is incredibly important, especially as we go into that heat of the summer and we go into the time that your dog is at a much higher risk of having this issue, right? So HRI, heat-related illness, it really varies dog to dog of the temp that they go into to hit this, but it's a general idea is like 104 to 105. If they're in that 104 to 105, they're going into trouble. You need to catch this, and so that the feeding the right food, Eukanuba, has been proven to lower the risk of this. One thing that I think most of us that are listening to this would all go, well, duh, right? But I'm going to say this because I'll tell you a little story. The note here is underweight dogs do much better than overweight dogs as far as going into heat-related illness. Well, duh.
Yeah, of course.
Right? But I recently had a lady that I talked to on the phone talking about her dog and just not having the endurance that this lady wanted to do. I think it was like ski jorking or something like that. Like, I don't even, what is that? Like they pull on the skis?
It's like they pull the skier.
Okay. Pull the skier. Okay.
I think. So sorry if we're wrong.
Yeah. I'm not a ski jorker, so I don't know. But the endurance was an issue. Okay. So we started talking. She started talking about the lab was like 90 pounds. And I'm just like, in my head, I am picturing a beer keg with legs, right? I don't know that, right? Because this could just be an enormously big dog, okay? And because I don't know this lady, I let her go through her whole story and everything. And so, and eventually you kind of weave through the weeds and you get there, right? And so I just mentioned, what about weight? Like, can you see the hourglass, figure in your dog's hips? Can you maybe see that back rib or so? Like, is your dog in a good athletic shape? And she said, and her response was, no, because I need all of my dogs to be fat and happy.
Oh.
And my response to that was, ma'am, those two words don't go in the same sentence together. I'm just being honest with you, right? Because you think about if you have a person that wants to be an athlete, the weight can oftentimes hold them back to achieving the goal that they want to do. You cannot take your grossly obese lab and go, hey, dude, like, I know you've been sitting on the couch eating potato chips, but I just picked up this new sport called ski jorking that I don't know how far they run, but I have to imagine miles that you're going to pull me. Maybe you're not in the best shape yourself, I don't know, but you're going to pull me for miles. Like, that's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
Whitney hates when I'm kind of overly blunt. Like, I could have been much more blunt. She gets embarrassed about it. But, like, come on, guys. You know what I mean?
It's just not fair to your dog. Like, that is not fair to your dog at all.
Right.
God, makes me so mad.
So we got pulled in the weeds. Anyway, funny story. But obviously, underweight dogs are better than overweight dogs as far as going into heat-related illness. Now, keep in mind, all of this is these are all general comments, because some dogs just naturally are affected by the heat more than others. Okay, younger dogs are more susceptible to HRI due to the older dogs understanding how to pace themselves and how to handle the heat. Older dogs, they have understood how to regulate their body better than a younger dog. I would say that there's some dogs that are just simply more intelligent than others that understand this, right? Like, your dog, right? And, if you have that dog that he's going to keep going at 100 miles an hour until he kills himself, he will kill himself.
Yeah.
So you have to be the one to watch this and to throttle back on it.
That was to me, I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. How did I not think of that?
That the younger dogs would do it easier.
Yeah, because they're.
Yeah, it is interesting. Living conditions. These are all factors that go into, a dog that would be more susceptible to HRI. Living conditions, right? So your average Joe should not try to match what a professional trainer is doing as far as length of time of a session, because if your dog is not in that peak performance, you're going to push them too hard. And the other note here is that the average Joe probably isn't as talented or as versed at reading a dog, and that's all that this is. You need to read before the dog before they get there. Outdoor living dogs do better than indoor living dogs, right? And I would consider our dogs indoor living dogs, because even when they are not inside the house with us, they are in an extremely comfortable indoor-outdoor kind of run that we have in our garage that's all set up for them. So I don't consider our dogs outdoor living dogs, although they're outside more. This was an interesting one to me, that the coat color is not enough of a factor in heat absorption for it to be a significant differentiator. So oftentimes I hear from our Texas clients, I need a yellow because blacks just don't do well down here. Well, this is saying that the study shows that's not a thing.
Right.
Like the coat I have down here, darker coats could potentially be more susceptible in certain situations, but the coat color is not enough of a factor in heat absorption. Black labs don't get hotter than yellow labs. And I also have under that there is that some, in all capitals, so there must have been something that I'm forgetting there, the some, small factor but not significant. So there might be a hair difference with like a black lab getting a hair hotter than a yellow lab, but it's not like your night and day difference. Really interesting, to me. But then hydration was going to be the biggest thing. So interesting. So I didn't know this. Muscle activity is the primary source of heat exertion during an exercise. So 75% of energy in a dog is released as heat. 75% of energy in a dog is released as heat. Now, the hard part is that, oddly enough, dogs do have sweat glands, but they just have such few of them. I believe they said
It's on their paws.
they're right on their paws,
Yep.
right?
They're pads.
They're
Not their
pad.
paws. They're pads.
Okay. But they don't have
Yep.
enough of it to actually help them disperse heat and get
Yep.
rid of heat, right? So 75% of that is released, or 75% of the energy is released as heat. So you have a dog that's really working hard, 75% of that energy has to be released as heat. Now, where this comes into an issue is if you're working a dog on a hot day and it's 102 degrees outside, and that dog is 102 degrees internal, right? And that dog is trying to suck in cooler air, right, to push that hotter air out to cool their body down. There's not enough temperature change. There's no temperature change in this example. The air is not helping the dog cool down.
Yep.
Right? This is why water is such a big thing, right? Like being in the water helps keep your dog cooler, right? With that energy being released as heat. Really interesting, to me. And then the last part that I have is the importance of keeping your dogs hydrated. Okay, so one thing that I think is interesting, that the food, as long as you're feeding a premium food, the food should be providing all the electrolytes that a dog needs. Your dog doesn't need Gatorade, right?
Yeah.
The food should be providing that because it's made for the athlete. But here's an interesting stat, okay? So this is a minimum. At the very minimum, your dog should be consuming 3 cups of water per every 1 cup of food in a day. So if you feed your dog let's just say 4 cups of food, that means your dog should be taking in 12 cups of water. Not at the same time. We're not saying that. Don't put 12.
Shove it down their throat.
Yeah. But that's how much water your dog should be taking in over the course of a day.
Yes.
Really interesting. Now, more than that, when you get into these high intensity exercise areas or situations, but how interesting is that? Like, to put it in a measuring
Right.
piece like that, that's pretty significant,
Right.
right? So it's just an interesting measuring stick for me.
Yeah. I think that all that is incredible. And I think you said interesting 100 times.
Oh, well, it was interesting.
It's so interesting. I love all that. I loved every minute of that trip that we had down there.
And that was just scratching the surface. I mean, these
Yes.
are just like, I'm just trying to pick out points of my notes here. I've got pages and pages of notes. But I just felt like that was really interesting information to relay to you. So here's the last thing I want to hit on today is, because I know you have a lot to do yet today. I have a lot to do yet today. So, but let's take some time with this, 'cause I think this is really interesting. So we have talked a lot, not only on this podcast, but on social media, about how this winter just does not want to let go. It's been brutal. I think just last week, got another 8 inches of snow.
It was -6 with wind chill.
Yeah.
It was cold.
I mean, it just will not stop.
No.
The number of hours that I've been sitting on a tractor snow blowing is, I actually really like being on the tractor snow blowing, but I really like ice cream too. And if I eat enough of it, I don't want to eat ice cream for a while. Like, that's where I'm at. I do not want to blow snow again for a long time.
Yes.
And so when we talk about this, sometimes I get comments or I get questions or feedback of like, why don't you go south? Why don't you go south? Because I'm looking at my dogs that haven't really worked much at all since the end of January. So we're going to be going on, well, that's not true. We did a little bit on the way. So let's just say February. Okay. So we're going to go on almost 2 months now without us getting real work in. We're doing some stuff, but this isn't real. Like, we're fighting 2.5 feet of snow yet. We've got ice everywhere. It's going to be a sloppy mess. Like, it's just one of those springs. It's going to be a tough one. So the comment is, why don't you go south? And the reason is because of my family. And my priority is being with my family. I am away so much during the hunting season that, from really September through end of January, I mean, I'm gone pretty consistently.
Yeah.
You go back to that comment, it actually kind of hurts a little bit when you talk about, how much a human kid changes in the course of a month. Like when I'm gone for 10 to 14 days and come back, like, I think those kids have doubled in size. They're acting different. Like it kills me. Our daughter just turned 4.
Yep.
Our son is 2.5. My life has changed. And so that's why. But I want to ask you something, which is really interesting. We have never talked about this. This was my surprise, that I was going to bounce on you. What was it like? So back when I was like really field trialing heavy.
Okay.
And when I was hunt testing heavy.
Yep.
Right? Like even though I'm still hunt testing, I really don't feel like it's anywhere near what I used to do.
Right.
What was it like for you? Like I'm trying to give a family perspective here, because this is, I think, what is oftentimes forgot about.
For sure.
And this is why so many of our friends are divorced or have family issues or maybe have some regrets. That was one of the things that, two of our dear friends who are Ronnie Smith and Susanna Love, great people. And, we had talked about a Pheasant Fest. He's like, so how's competing and stuff going? I'm like, man, like I'm just, to be honest with you, like I'm just kind of to a point where like I feel like I've proven what I need to prove. And like I get to some of these weekends and I've been working all week, and then I get to the weekend and I don't want to be doing what I did all week just to get back on Monday and do the same thing over again. And then the hard thing is that then I'm there at an event on a weekend, and everybody else that's there is excited because they're an attorney or an accountant or whatever. This is their hobby. This is their hobbies. They're excited about it. They want to talk dogs and they want to talk all this stuff. And I'm just like, I do this all week. I just want to run my dogs and go back to my truck. Like it just, but I don't. Right? I engage and Ronnie literally grabbed me by the arm and he said, "This is exactly why you see dog trainers burn out. Like you need to be careful with this." Right? Yeah. So, full circle. I would just kind of like your perspective. Like we've never really talked about that. Like what was that like for you? And do you like or dislike where we're at now? Like where do you kind of see this?
Okay, so when I think back, so here's the deal. Like what we are doing is not a career. It is a lifestyle. Like our life, our kids' lives, like they really do revolve around the dogs in our business, because we can't just turn the lights off at night and be done. We have to air dogs out. I have to do puppy chores. I have to take care of our mamas. And you try and separate it as much as you can, but you can never do that 24/7. Even when we go on vacation, we are still in contact with the kennel and making sure everything is going well. And so it's really hard when you do that 5 days a week and then you're traveling to do that. You have to have a work-life balance as much as you possibly can. So when I know that you're training 5 days a week and then you're traveling, being gone, there is no balance. It is work. There is no life, regular balance. And so it's really hard. It was really hard.
Well, so tell me about this. So like, especially I'm thinking field trialing, right? When I was like, obviously you're training really hard during the week because you want to be successful over the weekend.
Right.
So we would travel on Thursday afternoon.
Yep.
Be there, competing Friday and Saturday and Sunday to pack up Sunday, usually get home either, late or early on Monday, and then just to roll right into it again. There was no break.
There was no break.
Now we didn't have, was Ava born yet? Did I stop right then?
We were like, okay, we have to figure it out.
So like up to that point, like we didn't have the kid, side of it, but you still felt it. I would have to imagine.
Okay. We also didn't have the staffing at the kennel at that time, right? Like, so you left and I was still there doing everything myself, which is a lot for one person to handle. Or I would come with you. But even then, even when you're gone, we still had clients going. We had clients watching their dogs. And so you can't even mentally turn off. You can't even mentally just be in your own world at the trials. You still have to be Josh Miller, the trainer, handling horses now, along with the dogs.
on the pointing dog side.
Yeah,
of
the
things.
pointing dog thing.
Right.
But I mean, even so, you have clients there that are now running their own dog. You're also now trying to coach them. And so I feel like it was, for me, it was hard just because you were gone. And I knew you were gone still working. Like, this isn't just like a, hey, let's go hang out and run some dogs. This is still work.
So if I came to you and was like, hey, what'd you think about going down to Georgia for 3 months?
I'd say absolutely not. I would say we need to have a sit down conversation.
Right.
But you also, I mean, there is something to be said about structure, and especially when you have young kids, you have to be fair to them. And we don't homeschool, and I need structure. I know you like structure, and I would never want to uproot our kids and be like, now we're going to live here for a couple months. Now we're going to live here for a couple months. I mean, there are people it works fantastic for. That is not my personality, and that is not what I want. We have friends here. We have our family here. We have the rodeo stuff. We have our horses here. And so last thing that I would want to do is take that away from our kids for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. This is really where, I think you said it right. The work-life balance does come into play, but it's just sometimes I think, especially via social media, things seem so easy on the eyes of the person watching it, right? Like, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it too. I see something, I'm like, well, like, just do this, it solves it, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the way that people think when I talk about the weather that we're having, but there are more levels, to this.
For sure.
And if I were to be really honest with you guys, like, we take a financial hit over at the kennel because of this, because like we can't take water dogs in right now. We don't have any water to get into. We have ice, we have everything, like, so we have to naturally not take dogs in, at least not gun dogs in,
right,
during this time. So it affects us on a lot of levels, but at the end of the day, like, where my priority is with my family, and that will never change. And that's where you just make do. You make the best of the situation that you have. You make the best out of this weather, right? We focus more on obedience. We focus more on the puppy stuff. We take care of things we just don't have time for in the summer because we're go. There are a lot of things that we do to take advantage of this time. But I think it is really interesting because, to be really honest with you, like, I never thought much of, like, well, is Whitney okay with this? Like, my thought was, I have to be competing to prove myself. Like, as I have to do it. Like, I have to walk the walk. There are a lot of people out there that are talking the talk, right? And I wanted to walk it. Right? And so I had to be out there grinding, and I had to be doing it. I never even stopped to think about, like, what is my wife doing at home? Or, like, what does she think about this, right? Like,
You're
think,
so lucky.
I know. Well, I was just going to go into, I think it's because you were always so supportive of what I needed to do, what I felt like I needed to do, what I wanted to do.
And honestly, I probably didn't know any different. Like, I didn't know, like, I could have thought, why is he doing this? But I was just like, oh, this is what it is. Like, I wouldn't question it. Like, that's what you wanted to do. Why would I question what you want to do?
Yeah, well,
I should start questioning.
Not everyone would have been like that. But I do think it's interesting, and it just sparked it, that question for me, because a lot of people have had those questions or comments, and why don't you just go south? And it's not that easy. Yeah. Now, what I will say is so we're end of March. You give us 2 months, everyone's going to want to be here.
Yeah.
Because it is going to be gorgeous here, and it'll be hot down south, and then down south we'll be talking about how hot it is, and oh my gosh, like, this is not a bad place to be. Right? Yeah, we lose some time, but we also gain so much more of it during those summer months.
Right.
And so you kind of you take and give and take, right? Is there anything else you wanted to cover today?
I don't think so. I think it was great.
Yeah. Well, as we were recording this, I'm going to give a happy birthday to Whitney because tomorrow is her birthday. So we had our daughter's birthday yesterday. We have Whitney's birthday tomorrow, which that was Whitney's biggest fear when she was having Ava, was that they were gonna have to share a birthday, because then she would be taken away from Ava's birthday every year of her life. Well, it didn't work out that way.
No,
not by much, but it didn't work out that way. So Anyway, I hope all of you guys are having a great day. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. And I hope you guys got something out of this as far as this time together, because I think there was some really good stuff. And I will work on trying to get that Eukanuba podcast lined up, because I think it'd be so beneficial. And I think everyone would learn so much from it. So in the meantime, hope everybody has a great day. Go make sure you get out there if you can. Weather-wise, go get a head start on training season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to Eukanuba, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.